Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and today is the 2nd of February. Today I'm going to be doing a quick update just about the Bakhmut, Seversk, Kreminna areas. I'm going to try to link them together as well because I do see how they could all interlink as time goes on and the front line shifts. So I'm going to begin with the situation around Bakhmut, but I'm not going to really dwell on it for too long. Right now the Russians, they are about 2 kilometers away from the road that connects Counterattack to Ivanivske, and then from Ivanivske to Bakhmut. You see, this is the road over here. I'm going to highlight it over here. You can see. And then the Russian forward positions are in this forest, which is, about 2 kilometers away from Ivanivske at the moment. And it's also pretty close to the town of Chasiv Yar, where you have another road, as I said previously, leading from that town to Kromove to Bakhmut. And so this again could threaten the one last remaining supply line to Bakhmut that is not under Russian fire control. Because this road over here leading to Ivanivske, at this point, Ukraine is not using it anymore. It's basically impossible to move equipment in the open when the enemy is so close. So the same could soon start to apply to this road over here, where Russians may begin firing mortars or artillery or even like small arms fire onto the road. But let's move on to the actual front line. Over here in the Bakhmutka district, which is the southeastern district of Bakhmut, the Wagner group has been able to make gains. So if you see over here, this area that I'm going over, this entire perimeter, was previously under Ukrainian control. And the interesting thing about these few blocks is that they are some of the higher buildings, like apartment buildings or stores or schools. So these are like 2, 3, 4 stories high, and then all the surrounding residential blocks, they're just like 1 story high, because it's just like residential streets, like it's these minor houses that are not even 2 stories. So Ukraine, they had been fortified in this region for a while, as the Russians had control of the industrial area just to the north and the residential area just to the south. So the Ukrainians sort of got enveloped over there, and as a result, they had to withdraw before they would be totally surrounded. They do still have a presence in the government office over here, in the school, and so Russia will have to dislodge them from there. But then after that, there aren't that many large structures to be taken on the eastern side of Bakhmut. You have this road over here that leads to the bridge that crosses over to the other side of Bakhmut. So along this road, you admittedly do have a lot of apartment buildings and higher-rise buildings that Ukraine will still use to conduct, sniper fire, reconnaissance, or anything related to warfare. And so Russia will have to either attack those head-on, which is difficult when you're advancing through narrow streets, or they're going to have to flank it from the north, which is something that they have been trying to do, and we've seen some success for Russia in this regard. So beforehand, the art winery facility was contested. The Ukrainian troops conducted a counterattack in this area about a few weeks ago, and there was some back and forth fighting, but now Russia has been able to fully take control of the art winery. So using their new positions in the art winery, they were able to advance through this open area and take over the gypsum mine over here. So this new position has been taken by the Russians, and it allowed them to reach the residential area over here, which is connected to the other district in eastern Bakhmut, the Mykolaivka district. So now the Mykolaivka district is being attacked from multiple axes, not only from the north, where I will say the Ukrainians have been able to prevent Russia from making a larger breakthrough, but also from the east, the Russians are attacking. So this will make the defense of this certain urban cluster more difficult. It also allows the Russians an opportunity to cross over. I think this is either a river or body of water, or it's just a road or a rail line. But either way, you could see the clear division over here because of the bushes. And so Russia now has the opportunity to cross over this certain subdivision of Bakhmut and cross over into the basically the main road leading into western Bakhmut and flanking the main Ukrainian strongholds in that area. So in this area, like, you have some different special purpose battalions that are near the front line conducting all of these operations, like drone attacks or mortar fire, artillery strikes, reconnaissance, and other such things. And then you also have territorial defense brigades. They actually released a video showing how they were able to push back a group of Russian forces, and then they show how they killed some of them. So that's around the Bakhmutka district. Based on the video, it just seemed like it was in that district. Now, that's all the situation in Bakhmut. Crossing over the river is going to be difficult, as I said, because of the open fields that divide eastern and western Bakhmut, and how a lot of western Bakhmut is just filled with these high-rise apartments and these facilities, which is why, again, I don't think that the main point of these operations is to assault Bakhmut head-on. It's more so to pin down Ukrainian forces as things are going on elsewhere, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. In Baldatne and the surrounding regions, the Russians have been able to advance past the road that they have recently taken and really attack on multiple axes surrounding the Ukrainian defensive fortifications. So you see over here, they were able to take over the area just to the west of Baldatne, and they are trying to envelop the Ukrainian positions over here. There are some trenches that were hastily set up by Ukrainian engineers, and those are being actively shelled. We have geolocated footage of this from this marker that I'm going to open right now. You see this one, the blue one? So you have Russia shelling Ukrainian fortifications, zigzag trenches. Then you also have them attacking from the north, where they crossed over the Mykolaivka river. Actually, I have a video from the Wagner group, which is pretty interesting, where they describe how they had issues trying to cross over the river because all the crossings were destroyed, obviously, during the fighting. Ukraine probably destroyed some of them as they were retreating. And as a result, some of them admitted that they had to swim across the river. And the river is pretty narrow, so it's not that big of a feat, but it is deep, first of all, so you can't just walk across it like I said previously. Apparently, it's very deep, so they have to swim across. Also, it's extremely cold at the moment, so like you could get frostbite or something from the river as you cross over. But a lot of people were laughing at me for saying that the troops would cross the river just by themselves without any sort of support. But it seems like they had to do that at some point because they clearly didn't have pontoon bridges on hand. They clearly didn't have engineering units that had the proper materials to construct a makeshift bridge. So if they did have to swim across the river, then it shows that maybe their advance was not aided by these auxiliary units. But anyway, the Wagner group was also able to take control of areas adjacent to this town over here, Mykolaivka, I don't know how to say that, using their new positions in Sahoy, Vantsedi. So now this threatens to cut off the support that the Ukrainian fortifications have, maybe like their supply line or just like their rear in a way, by attacking this town over here. And then there's basically going to be no way to connect the Ukrainian forward positions to the E40 road, for instance, over here, or to the wider Ukrainian defensive network. So that's the issue that Russia's assault on this town poses. Also, it's the fact that this entire road over here from Vasyukivka to Mykolaivka is also on a pretty low elevation. The Russians, they could take over the surrounding heights where Ukraine is currently fortified, and then they will be able to pretty effectively shell the Ukrainian positions within these towns, and so it may make it difficult to hold on to them. This ridge over here is at a pretty low elevation, so Ukraine's going to have to retreat past it if they end up losing their fortifications. So then I would assume that their next line of defense would be in this area over here that I'm crossing in X. Maybe over there they'll try to defend. But again, this presents an opportunity to capture some pretty large open areas and attack several lines of attack. You see the E40 road over here? The Russians could, in theory, attack it and then cut off the road that is supplying the Ukrainian troops in northern Bakhmut and in Parasyukivka. So that's another threat that is presented by this situation. But let's go up and talk about Russia's capture of a new town, Mykolaivka. So first of all, Russia took Sukhoi, Ividseti, and then they enveloped Mykolaivka, so the Ukrainians retreated before they would be surrounded. And so now the town of Mykolaivka, per this video, is fully under Wagner control. This means that the next option for the Russians is either to attack Fedorivka over here or to attack Rozhdolivka. I think Rozhdolivka is better fortified because there have been numerous assaults from the south on Rozhdolivka, and none of them have succeeded. The 10th Mountain Assault Brigade, and I think specifically the 109th Battalion of that brigade, has really been essential to Ukraine's defense over here. And now, if the Russians could continue their momentum and take over this town of Fedorivka, then they could try to flank Rozhdolivka. They'd have to cross the river though, but it would put a lot of pressure onto Rozhdolivka, more than we've seen previously. There's also a train station over here, and there's also a minor airstrip just to the south of Fedorivka. So you see this entire road that leads to Seversk. It's very rural in nature, so the settlements over here, they aren't very dense. So taking them over is actually pretty easy. They're all on pretty low elevation in the surrounding areas, or just like open fields. There may not be that many Ukrainian fortifications in this area because most of them are centered around the eastern part of Seversk, because that's where Russia was trying to attack previously. And so this presents a gaping hole in Ukraine's defensive formation over here. One area where they do have some fortifications is in this blue polygon that I'm crossing, and you can see how there's like some higher elevated areas in that region, in that Ukraine, based on satellite imagery, built some new trenches in this general area. So Russia's going to have to dislodge those if they want to continue the advance. At the same time, the Russians are actively assaulting Spirny, and they have not made any successful gains as of yet. Same thing with Bilohorivka. They've tried assaulting it numerous times, but there haven't been any changes just yet. Now, moving on to the Kreminna front, there is some pretty interesting developments that are going on over here. So, previously the Ukrainians, we could say they were trying to counterattack, first of all, from Chervonopopivka, and they were pretty close to taking the town. They reached the outskirts, taking over the tree belts, and then from the south they tried assaulting Kreminna by advancing through a very thick forest using their DRG units. And so there are multiple theories for why Russia is now trying to go on the offensive. One could be to prevent Ukraine from going on the offensive first, and the other one could be to try to move the front line towards the Zherebets River. So this is the Zherebets River. I'm going to outline it. It's this river over here. Russia tried maintaining a defensive line over here when Liman originally fell, but they were not successful, so they had to retreat to the line around Kreminna. But if they were to retake the open areas in between the Kreminna line and the Zherebets River, they would have a big buffer in between the city of Kreminna and just the road in general. So it would be a big success, and it could be used as a stepping stone to potentially take Liman. Although I think assaulting Liman head-on would be difficult because there's a very high Ukrainian troop concentration in this area. There are a lot of different units that I've mapped onto here. You can just look through them for yourself. But there's so many that are around Dibrova, around Yampolivka, Terny, Ivanivka, all these areas. And so assaulting head-on will be difficult. Right now, the Russians are trying to assault in the direction of Yampolivka and Terny. These are the two towns that were mentioned. And they're also trying to conduct counterattacks in the direction of Chervonopopivka, although the front line is still very close to the town. The units that were mentioned in these attacks specifically include the 76th Guards Air Assault Division. This is a pretty big formation with many units within it, so I'm not saying that the entire division is actively fighting. There may be certain regiments that are fighting, that are a part of the division, but not all of the division is fighting. If the entire division is fighting, though, that would be pretty significant, because there are probably in the tens of thousands of Russian troops over here. Although I will say that many of these people within these units, many of these soldiers did incur casualties in previous battles around Izium and Balklia, that entire area. So we don't actually know their real size and strength at the moment. What we are hearing, though, is that the 76th Guards Air Division was able to stockpile on a lot of heavy armor and like light vehicles, and that they gathered around the Kreminna area to launch a counterattack. It's not something that was propagated by Russian sources. Ukrainian sources were predicting an offensive last night. That didn't happen until today, and today we saw Russia make some incremental advances around these open fields. So maybe it's not an offensive at all. Maybe it's just positional warfare. Maybe it's just Russia trying to fix the battlefield, trying to improve their position. Either way, we did see some changes over here. We also saw rumors about the city or the town of Mykolaivka. The Ukraine retreated across the Zhyarets River over here. That's unconfirmed, but the Ukrainian positions in Mykolaivka are pretty difficult to maintain because you have the Russian pressure from Ploshchanka, where you have the 3rd Motor Rifle Division, which is actively engaged in the fighting right now. And you also have the Russian positions to the north in Novovodiane. So it would be plausible if Ukraine was eventually pushed out of Mykolaivka. There are some other units involved in this assault, according to some sources from both sides. I saw the 144th Guards Motor Rifle Division mentioned, and there might be some other ones that I'm missing out on. But all in all, that's it for today. I want to thank everybody for watching, and so that's all. And